The recycled air on the Velthori Royal Station smelled like crushed flowers, and something underneath that Marin couldn't name, something cool and faintly electric, like the moment before a storm. She noticed it the second the docking seal hissed open, before she even saw the welcome delegation waiting on the other side with their silver robes and their unsettling, luminous eyes. She was not supposed to be here. The station's cultural liaison had come down with something untranslatable 3 hours before departure. The academy director had looked around the briefing room with the expression of someone who has already made a decision they know they'll regret, and landed on Marin, junior archivist, 2 years out of her certification, currently holding a stylus and a half-eaten protein bar. "You've read the protocols," he'd said. It wasn't a question. "I've read everything," she'd said, which was true and also not at all the same thing. The Velthori delegation was 4 people tall and moved like water finding a path downhill, not quite gliding, not quite walking, something in between that Marin's knees found vaguely unsettling. Their hands had an extra joint. She had known this from the files. Knowing it from files and watching a hand reach toward you to offer a formal greeting gesture were 2 different kinds of knowing. She pressed her own hand to her sternum the way the protocols described, 3 fingers spread, thumb tucked. The lead delegate's luminous eyes tracked the movement with an expression she couldn't read. "Archivist Marin," the delegate said. The translation unit at Marin's collar rendered the Velthori sounds into something approximating her name. "You are not Liaison Abuobai." "No," Marin said. "He's unwell. I apologize for the disruption to your expectations. I'm here to honor the exchange in his place if you'll have me." A pause, the kind of pause that had weight to it. "You are very young," the delegate said. "For a human, I'm fairly average, actually," Marin said, and then immediately wondered if that was an appropriate thing to say to a Velthori royal delegate. The protocols had not covered that particular conversational fork. But one of the delegates behind the leader made a sound, short, clipped, somewhere between a cough and a note of music, and Marin realized with a small shock of warmth that it was laughter. She looked for the source and found her. A young Velthori standing slightly apart from the others, dressed in robes that were a deeper silver than the rest, edged in something that caught the light like running water. Her eyes were the particular pale gold of the station's bioluminescent panels. She was watching Marin with an expression that was, unmistakably, curious. The lead delegate followed Marin's gaze and straightened almost imperceptibly. "This is the first daughter of the Velthori Concordat. You will address her only when addressed." "Of course," Marin said, already knowing she was going to break that rule and unable to explain why she was so certain. The archive exchange was scheduled across 6 days. Marin's job was simple: catalog 17 millennia of Velthori cultural records in exchange for access to the Human Interstellar Library's equivalent holdings. She had done harder things. She had, in graduate school, indexed the entire agricultural history of a colony whirled in under a week on bad coffee and determination. She set up her station in the archive room they gave her, which was vast and cool and smelled even more strongly of that electric storm scent, and she got to work. The first daughter, whose name Marin learned later, translated roughly as Vessel of the Deep Sky, though she had said, "You can call me Sail. It's what my younger siblings call me when they want something, and I find I prefer it," appeared on the 2nd afternoon. She stood in the doorway of the archive room for a full minute before Marin noticed her, because Marin had found something extraordinary in the records and was talking to herself about it in the way she did when she forgot other people existed. But that can't be right. That's not how light transfer architecture worked in that period, unless they were doing something with the atmospheric membrane that nobody recorded properly, which would mean the gap in the Tharis collection isn't a gap. It's a choice. They chose to omit it. Why would they choose? "The Tharis collection," Sale said from the doorway, "was curated by my great-grandmother's second husband, who was, by all accounts, a political coward. Marin looked up. Sale was leaning against the doorframe with her extra-jointed hands folded in a way that somehow communicated both formality and ease. "You know the Tharis collection," Marin said. "I grew up in this archive," Sale said. "My mother used to bring me here when the court was difficult." A small pause. "The court is often difficult." Marin looked at the records open on her screen. She looked at Sale. The protocol said, "Do not engage the royal family without invitation." The part of her that had been a researcher for 2 years said she already knew the answer before she asked the question. "Would you like to help me find what he left out?" Sale's pale gold eyes were very still for a moment. Then she pushed off from the doorframe and crossed the archive room and sat down across from Marin. And Marin moved her equipment to make room, and neither of them mentioned the protocols. They worked through the afternoon, and when the station's light systems shifted to evening tone, neither of them had noticed. "Here," Sale said, pulling up a secondary record index. He cross-referenced the atmospheric membrane designs under agricultural subsidy records, deliberately obscure. "Why?" Sale's expression was complicated. "Because the atmospheric membrane technology was developed by a collective on the station's lower rings. Common workers. My great-grandmother's second husband had views about whose contributions deserve to be remembered." Marin looked at the hidden records. 17 names. 17 people who had solved a problem that their world's history had chosen to pretend was solved by someone else. "I'm putting them in the catalog," Marin said. Sale looked at her. "My great-grandmother's second husband's family still holds seats on the Concordat Council." "I know," Marin said. "I'm putting them in anyway." Another of those weighted silences. Then Sale said quietly, "Yes, I thought you probably would." The council member arrived on the 5th day. Marin knew there was a problem before she understood what kind of problem it was. She could tell from the way Sale went still when she saw him, the way the extra joint in her hands locked up, the way her head tilted fractionally back in a posture Marin had come to recognize as Sale bracing for something she didn't want. His name translated as something like Keeper of the High Record. And he had the senior delegate's silver robes and the expression of someone who had been waiting for an opportunity. "Archivist," he said to Marin without looking at her, "I've reviewed your catalog entries. There are irregularities." "There are corrections," Marin said. "You have attributed 17 developmental contributions to names that do not appear in the official Concordat record." Now he looked at her, and his luminous eyes had nothing warm in them. "This is a violation of the exchange agreement's accuracy provisions." "The Concordat record is inaccurate," Marin said. "That's what I'm here to fix." "You are here," he said, very precisely, "as a junior functionary performing a role you were not assigned. You do not have the standing to make determinations about Velthori historical accuracy." Marin breathed in. The archive room smelled like storms. She thought about the 17 names and the coward who had hidden them, and about the fact that she had read every protocol document twice, and she absolutely knew, that the exchange agreement's accuracy provisions referred to the accuracy of the physical transfer, not editorial sovereignty over the records. "With respect," she said, "I have the standing granted to me by the Interstellar Library Charter, which requires that cataloged records reflect primary source evidence. The primary source evidence supports the attribution. If the Concordat official record conflicts with the primary source evidence, the primary source evidence takes precedence under the terms we both agreed to." Silence. Sale had not moved. Her hands were still locked at that tense joint. The council member looked at Marin for a long time. Then he looked at Sale. Something passed between them that Marin couldn't read, something old and layered and political in ways she didn't have the context for. "The first daughter," he said, "should not be spending her time in the company of junior human functionaries." The first daughter, Sale said very quietly, will spend her time as she finds valuable. Another silence, a different kind. He left, the archive room's door sealed behind him with a soft, final sound. Marin let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Her hands, she noticed, were shaking slightly. She pressed them flat on the desk. "He'll file a formal objection," Sale said. "I know. The catalog entries may be overturned." "I know that too." Marin looked at the 17 names on her screen. "But they'll be in the Interstellar Library's copy. They have to be, under the charter. Whatever happens here, they're somewhere now that isn't just a hidden index under agricultural subsidies." Sale was quiet. Then she crossed to Marin's side of the desk, not to look at the screen, but to sit next to her, close enough that Marin could feel the different warmth of a Velthori body, slightly cooler than human, and the faint electric storm scent was strongest there. "I've known the correct answer to that man's arguments for 11 years, Sale said. "I've watched my mother know it. I've watched every junior council member know it and say nothing." Marin waited. "You've been here 5 days, Sale said. "I had all the records," Marin said. "I just read them." Sale made the sound again, that short, clipped, musical sound that Marin now knew was laughter, but softer this time, more private. She reached out and her extra-jointed hand rested next to Marin's on the desk, not quite touching, the way you might offer something without insisting it be taken. Marin turned her hand over. The archive room was quiet. The light systems were in evening tone. Somewhere in the station systems, 17 names were written into a record that would outlast every political coward who had ever tried to erase them. "My mother will ask about you," Sale said after a while. "Is that good or bad?" "I genuinely don't know." A pause. "She'll want to know why I spent the last 4 days in the archive." "You could tell her you were working." "I was working," Sale said, and she sounded slightly defensive and also like she was trying not to smile. And Marin found that the combination was something she wanted to keep hearing for a long time. Outside the viewport, the stars were out. Or rather, they'd been out all along, the way stars are, patient and enormous and quietly present. The station's bioluminescent panels had gone to their deep evening gold, the same color as Sale's eyes. Marin thought about 17 people who had solved something and been forgotten. She thought some things once written down stay written. She thought, with a warmth that had nothing to do with the archive's temperature, about the 5 days remaining on her rotation, and the 7 other archive rooms she hadn't cataloged yet, and how there was still so much left to read. "Teach me that," she said. "The sound you make when something is funny, I can't quite get the frequency right." Sale looked at her. "Teach me," Marin said again, and she meant it, and Sale knew she meant it. And so, in the archive room with the storm-sent air, and the stars keeping quiet watch through the viewport, the first daughter of the Velthori Concordat taught a junior human archivist how to laugh in a language that wasn't hers, and Marin got it slightly wrong every time, and kept trying anyway, and both of them agreed, without saying so, that this was fine.